thank every deputy for contributing to the debate this evening. In Glasgow last week before last, the 26th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, it was interesting that there wasn't a single country represented there which didn't recognise the absolute urgency and need for us to meet the targets set in the Paris Climate Agreement, that we try and keep increasing global temperatures below 1.5 degrees. And that is because, as Mary Robinson, I think, said during the course of those proceedings, you can't negotiate with science. That target, that limit was set for very good reason, that going above it risks us going beyond tipping points, which would see runaway and dangerous climate change. Dangerous beyond compare. And similarly in this House, I think it's important to reflect that this is not an issue that divides on the basic science. There's no one here who spoke in opposition to the certainty that climate change is happening, that it's caused by our emissions, particularly from fossil fuels and other land use and other short-lived greenhouse gases, and that we have to act fast. And the reason we have to act fast, if you're to accept the science, is what has been clearly set out. What we have to do is halve our emissions this decade and go net zero globally by 2050. And that's a challenge beyond compare. That's never happened before. No country has halved emissions, which is what we're setting out to do now this decade. But it's what we have to do to protect our next generation, their future. The interesting perspective, if you look at that, for a country, Ireland, is what is the potential, or what is the alternatives if we didn't meet it? Every other country is clearly going in this direction. Our next door neighbour, the UK, have set similar net zero plans that they intend to achieve. If you look in the continent, the major economies, Germany, France, are committing to go in this direction. Germany likely to accelerate now with the creation, I expect, of a new government, including Green Party component, pushing for further and greater ambition. The US economy doing the same. And despite the setback in Glasgow, Indian and Chinese governments saying they would, creating some uncertainty around the phase out of coal, that it is clear every single modern economy is going in this direction. It's inevitable that the economy is going to decarbonise, and those countries that are first are going to benefit most. So that's the first most important thing to remember. A, we need to do this for basic climate justice for the next generation, for those poorest people in the world who are suffering most from the consequences of climate change. But B, economically, if we weren't to be beyond compare ambitious and make some of the real hard decisions we're going to need to make, then we would fall behind. Then we wouldn't actually develop this opportunity that does exist for us to be good at this, just to learn how to do it and share that knowledge and experience elsewhere. And we have the structures in place to do it. We have political agreement on the imperative. We have a national development plan that sets out a €165 million public capital investment programme. We know there's another additional 120, roughly about at least 100 million of that in private capital we know has to be deployed. We have in the Shaping Our Electricity Future plan from EirGrid a clear understanding as to how we can develop economic opportunity across the island by tapping into the renewable power resources and the microgeneration power resources. Deputy Harkin, you're right. This has to be community-centred, not just big business. And we know we can do that. And we also now have a climate action plan that sets out the framework that we will follow to deliver on it. And an act that means that if government departments are failing, they're held to account by the Climate Change Advisory Council and by this House, and we'll have to amend policies year on year to make sure we start back on the path to decarbonisation. I described it in, I think, the Oireachtas committee the other day as a straitjacket, but I think it's an appropriate straitjacket because we haven't delivered the change, we haven't risen to the opportunity, and we do need to really test ourselves here because it's not easy change. And the reason why this political agreement on the basic science and on the imperative is important is that this is going to have to be 3, 4, 5, 6 governments in a row are going to have to follow this course. So By signing into that act, that's what we're signing into. It's next government as well as this government is going to have to do it. So the more thought we put into the measures, the more consensus we can get on the basic approach, the better, because then we won't be stopping and starting. We'll be giving clear signals and clear certainty to all our people on the course we're about to take. I'm going to very briefly just make a couple of points to respond to some of the deputies that I've heard here, some of the points raised. Firstly, Deputy Batchik raised the question, it's a valid one, about the series of actions which will be published within the coming weeks to show exactly how government is going to hold itself to account on delivering the key measures we need to take and need to make. But for those, the key point, first point, on this, what I've heard in the various contributions I heard from Deputy Donoghue, Deputy Healy-Rae and others, that there is a rural-urban divide in this. Well, if there is, let's stop that now, straight away, because that doesn't serve anyone. And there's no one pointing the finger at any one community or any one industry or any one sector and saying, you're the problem, you're the ones that have to be held to account. We're all involved in this. And Irish farming will be at the centre of the solutions, but also it'll be the centre of the future of paying our farmers properly for the important work that they do in providing food, but also managing and looking after our land and nature, the natural systems which are under real stress, which are heavily polluted, where biodiversity is lost. Well, let's start paying our farmers for the restoration of those natural systems, as well as the high-quality food that they do produce. And that's surely something that will not divide. Why would that divide us as we set out mechanisms to pay our farmers properly, and foresters, and fishers, to actually protect and make sure that we live with our natural systems and island natural beauty that we love? On transport, it's going to be more, I always say it's going to be more difficult, because in truth, we've embedded through our planning of the last 50 years dependency on a car that's going to be hard to unwind. And it's not that we're saying no to people driving. We will need, and they will be electric, we will need people to have those choices and freedom to be able to move around. But the current system doesn't work, not just on climate terms, but also on gridlock geometry. And if we go back just to reliance on those systems, even replacing electric vehicles with combustion engines, we will still have those problems. So this is an opportunity to switch fuels, to shift to other modes, and to reduce the overall volume of traffic so we can all get around in a much more efficient, better way for our local communities. In energy, we've huge opportunity because we have this massive, particularly offshore wind resource that we can and will tap into. But we should start first and foremost about thinking about heating. On this cold day, we should start thinking about how this is an opportunity to improve every single home so that actually we don't have to spend so much keeping ourselves warm and healthy in our homes. And this is achievable. We've had a very interesting meeting earlier on today with the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, mapping out some of this heating future. It will involve district heating, which will bring communities together. Much more efficient, much cheaper way of heating our homes. It will involve the switch to heat pumps. We will be switching from oil-fired central heating to heat pumps as those oil-fired oil burners need to be replaced. That's what we're going to have to do. And we will support it in government, and the future government will too, because it makes such sense, with grants and with one-stop shops and clear pathway to this better way of heating our homes. And lastly, industry. And I'm only just skating over the surface here. But just one point on this day, when the Commission for the Regulation of Utilities has pointed out that all industries also have to play their part, the data centre industries too. They have to live within this plan. Every sector does. No sector is held beyond the others or pointed. We're not going out there naming and shaming, because they know, everyone knows, everyone in business and industry knows that this is the way the world is going. This is the way, if you want to be in business, you have to go too. And that's what we should do as a country, and we will do as a country. We will be good at this. We will make this transition. It'll take us time. It'll take time to ramp up the ports to deliver the offshore turbines we need. It'll take time to make that switch from oil-fired to heat pump technology. But we can and will do it. It'll be organised from this House, these two houses. Local authorities will have a central role. We'll do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.